Holy I don't say that often, but holy episode 15 of Summertime Rendering was just amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Animation, the layout, the directing, just how everything just flowed, and just the intricacies of everything that was happening, everything about it proved that Shinpei had a plan. He laid out the plan, they executed the plan, and it worked. I love that this actually ended in success. I was kind of dreading, like, here we go, here's Shinpei dying again, but because it laid out so well, it felt so encouraging. Like, this felt like a win, even though, again, technically in the next episode, it can start off with him dying. I think they've laid out something at this point that this is going to be okay. No matter what happens beyond this point, what they've laid out, it's going to make this always be a success. I think this is always going to remain a success. But, yeah. Absolute hats off to the animation studio. Hats off to the director. Hats off to the writer. Everything about this episode was so amazing. It was just so good. It was so good. Where do I even start? I took zero... I almost took zero notes because of how good this episode was. Like, I took notes up into the point where everything started going crazy, and then after that, I'm locked. Like, I was locked on the screen, and that rarely ever happens to me. But yeah, the beginning of this episode was really around Shinpei realizing that, yes, he did indeed get shot by Nezu's gun, realizes that he needs to change anything. He kind of assumed that they were going to come directly towards him, but now he realizes that he's got to play it very safe. He's got to get everybody together, which is kind of what my assumption was. I'm glad that he didn't just give up. My assumptions that I made in the last impressions video was around the idea that he was just going to give up. Like, I need to do this solo, or he was going to figure out how to get Ushio to learn how to make copies. But no, he doesn't. He keeps with his plan. He is going to fight back. He is going to he's going to continue this army. Like, this is what he's going to do, and he's going to stick to it. But they also emphasize a lot. I love how he kind of envisions this feeling that he's losing his footing. Like, this timeline that he has control over, this observation is crumbling before his feet. And he later on describes this whole time jumping thing, that he assumes he only has, if he dies one more time, this is it. After this is the last turn. And the way he predicts this is because how quickly the resets are happening, the time he's getting is lowering. Like, the time catches up to him faster. So he's observing here, and every now and then he can fall back, and eventually he's going to pop up over here and not going to be able to get his footing. He's going to fall to darkness, which is an interesting way of them describing it, because honestly, when he first described it, it didn't make any sense to me. I'm like, why are you getting to this conclusion? But the way that he could describe it with the two lines catching up to each other did make sense to me. So yeah, that turns into the final go, which was absolutely phenomenal. Like I said before, everything was laid out so well. You had Nezu up here that was doing cover fire, taking out all the easy to get shadows. You technically had some sort of guard between him and everybody else, so that when they sent Mio after him, they had somebody there to guard it, which, by the way, Tokiko, I mean, this is one of those cool things where I don't necessarily feel that Tokiko's, like, demeanor here was weird, because she's been dealing with this for a long time. Deep inside, Tokiko's kind of messed up. Again, she's been technically feeding Hiroko for a long time. She's been doing some really nasty things for a long time, so I kind of figure that she's going to be more mature and a little bit more twisted than anybody else in this cast. So yeah, the moment that Mio goes after her and suddenly she's like, yeah, you ain't getting near me, and these two show up and they start beating the crap out of him, I was like, wow, hype. Absolute hype. I love that segment. And it was interesting to figure out, like, I was assuming when Shiori turned, or Haine turned and started going after Tokiko's shadows, that she was going to control him. But this is where we kind of get an indication of essentially the link connection that's been broken. And again, this is something that I've assumed with Ushio originally, was the reason why she's not controlled, the reason why she's able to work outside of Haine and everything she's doing, is because she's gotten that link broken. Now, the question is, did Ushio figure out how to do that? Or again, was this Hishikata? But either way, knowing how that works, Ushio was able to disconnect Tokiko's shadows, and it seems like based on the end of the episode, they're going to do the same thing for Shadow Mio. So we get not only the Ushios, but we also get the Mios now, which is great. Which Tokiko's probably going to be super happy about. Like, if Tokiko can get two Mios, she's happy. Like, this whole moment where Mio is coming after her, and she's like, oh yeah, That body, like, we went from Tokyo being like super in love with Mio as like this friend that she cherishes so much to, yeah, Tokyo just straight up loves Mio. Like, she wants her bad. But yeah, that aside, going to the hallway with Ryunosuke and taking down this entire horde of just all that. And oh my gosh, I keep going back to the animation. The animation was so good. Or just jumping around and shooting at the same time, and equally, chef's kiss. Ria Kajimiya, my gosh, I love her so much. Oh, her voicing was great. Just that morbidity and then the anger that she had so many emotions in this episode. Morbidity, anger, sorrow, everything was portrayed by Shiori in this episode, and all of it was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, her just gone. It was great. And then her getting frustrated over the shadows that aren't being controllable. It was so good. She realizing that Ushio did it all, going nuts after her. It was great. I did love this little brief moment where you do see, it was technically in 2 points in this episode. You really get to see this idea of Shiori / Heine really caring for Shide. Because Shide gets harmed by Nezu. They think they took out Nezu, and Nezu's like no-scoping Shide, and Shiori's like concerned for Shide. And again, technically in the very end, when you have Shiori's like completely decimated and she's laying there, she's talking about being hungry and Shide's talking to her. It really does kind of show that Shide, being like this embodiment of greed, really does care for Heine, really does care for Shiori, and equally the other way around. But this question mark's gonna be, what was inside of Shide? We're not getting there yet. Yes, they go to the auditorium. That was way cool. Like, it keeps hitting. Like, the layout of this battle was so well constructed that nothing really feels out of place, and it kind of just keeps flowing. Again, to the credit of Shinpei, if he set up this whole plan, it all kind of went out the way that he wanted to. Getting him there, putting all this gasoline, creating the gasoline out of the hair, dropping the gasoline, lighting it, and equally with Shiori freaking out the moment that Shide was going to get killed, erasing all the oxygen in the room, copying this entire auditorium and erasing all the air inside of it just to save Shide. It was so good. They obviously really did feel like they were going to win. Like, if we can just take down Ushio before Shinpei dies, we got it. We won. And honestly, they fooled me. Building up to this whole segment, I was like, okay, we're finally going to have the reset where he doesn't have Ushio with him. Again, technically with the last reset, I thought that was going to be the case because Ushio wasn't near him, that she wasn't going to transfer with him. But again, they've kind of established already that it's not necessarily that Ushio has to be with Shinpei, it's just that she has to die. She has to live past his dying. But yeah, besides a few bullet holes, they won. Like, again, this is a victory that I never actually thought that we would actually get this early on. And again, I didn't really technically believe they were going to win fully because, again, we technically still have 10 episodes. But I hate the fact that I know how many episodes are left. I hate knowing that. That's the problem. It's like, I know that probably the manga readers didn't know when that point was going to come, but it sucks knowing that we still have plenty more to go. But yeah, following this, they do decide they are going to disconnect Mio from Heine. So again, we will have another Mio, which is great. I've always loved Mio. She's always been like the embodiment of the struggle of the flesh and the shadow. She's always loved Shinpei. The moment they start out, that's my Shinpei. You know, she's going after Shinpei, and then the moment that Ushio runs off with Shinpei, is like, "Where are you going with Shinpei?" You could see like how jealous and how angry Shadow Mio gets. She absolutely, the flesh still controls her. But again, that technically was the whole case with Shiori. Even at these moments of the brink of death, she keeps talking about how she wants to leave with family. Now, them bringing that up again this episode really did have me questioning, why are they having Shiori talk about wanting to not be erased because she wants to leave with her family again? Again, it kind of leads me to believe that Heine, as Shiori, gets this sense of family, and she wants that family. She craves that family. Or again, the feeling of the love for your family and your parents is enough to overcome Heine's control, the shadow's control. But now the other important thing that happens in the auditorium, of course, is the moment that Ushio is about to kill Shide, or it seems like he's trying to erase her and get rid of it. We have this point in which she realizes, okay, this thing isn't burning like all the other shadows. It's obviously different. But then realizing at some point, there's an arm in there. They finally acknowledge that there is something inside of Shide. But not only that, but the entire time that it was talking to Ushio, thinking that it was going to destroy Ushio, it kept stuttering. So during the stuttering part, I was starting to think that it was some sort of robot, but then my mind started going to more it being something like just a bank of data. Like it's becoming distorted because of the flames, so the data is starting to become corrupted. But it having something inside of it is very curious. That would explain why when she took a snapshot of its arm, she didn't get anything, is because the arm wasn't the body. The body's inside of there. But why is a body inside of a shadow? It's sort of an opposite of what everything else is. Everything else we see, it's a person with a shadow underneath it. In this case, it seemed like it's a person with a shadow over it. But again, bringing up the big question, as always, what the heck is this thing? I'm curious if this is something we're going to be getting into next. I know eventually we're going to be getting into what Shide is, again, this embodiment of greed, but what exactly is it to Heine? Did I miss anything? Like I said, I didn't take any notes, so this really sucks not having notes, but I just really wanted to get on here and talk and just really gush about how amazing this episode was, how great it was laid out, how much hype it was. It was just so much fun to watch. And yes, finally getting a taste of victory for Shinpei, honestly. However long it lasts. At this point, I'd be very curious to see what actually happens from this point on, because again, you technically do have... Shide did say that he's just got to get some time to rebuild. So it's not as if Shide's down, and we don't know how long it's going to take for Shide to get back up, but Shide's still there. Heine's still there. Technically, they don't really... I mean, yes, you could probably have some other villagers that are possibly there, but I'd be very curious as to what Heine is going to do at this point. Will Heine finally get up and fight? Because she is literally back to the corner. Will desiring to win, will Heine give up what energy she has right now just to finish it off? I kind of feel right now, with how much victory we have, with the fact that Heine is so backed up, the fact that she has no allies anymore, Shide's down, I really feel right now we're going to have a big betrayal. Like, I feel right now a betrayal is going to happen, and that's going to push Shinpei into the final reset. I don't know how that's going to lay out, but I just feel like it's going to happen. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't think we're going to lose this battle. This battle right here, I think, is a snapshot. It's kind of going, again, back into the whole ReZero concept where there's checkpoints. The checkpoints are really the timeline catching up to him. They're not necessarily checkpoints. It's just that there's only so far you can go now. And so I feel like he's going to have there's going to be some big betrayal, and it's going to put him back against the wall. We can't keep this victory forever. And so the only thing I can think of is somebody betraying him, because again, Heine is at her worst right now. Shiori's destroyed, and Shide is trying to rebuild itself. But technically, if I remember correctly, in the whole festival thing, there was multiple Shides. There was multiple of these really big beings that were out there. Is she going to make those things appear? Or do they only appear during the festival because that's when she's awakening truly? Before I finish, there was one other thing that kind of happened in this episode that I thought was really cool, and that was Hizuru technically thanking Ryunosuke. Like she said, you probably won't hear this, thank you. Which does technically have her acknowledge this presence inside of her. I almost feel like she's thanking her brother, kind of thanking the existence within her, which I thought was kind of a cool thing for her, at least, from somebody that doesn't like these shadows and stuff, to accept. Or it's just her really wanting to thank her actual brother that she never got to thank. But anyways, that's enough of me gushing about episode 15. Really loved it. It was a phenomenal episode. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Was it as hype for you as it was for me? Subscribe to the channel if you've not already, so you can get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, and a super thanks button down below. I definitely appreciate everybody that does. And y'all take care.